Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. I do hope you're having a good day and welcome back to another video. So today we are doing something that I haven't done in a long time. We are going to be doing a review of a wide-body aircraft. Let's get right on into it. Okay then, so as strange as that sounds, it is absolutely true. It turns out that the last time that I uploaded a wide-body aircraft review on my YouTube channel was over 2 years ago in March 2022. Now that is just mad. Now obviously it can be explained by the fact that Will Scarlett International, which is the main airport that I'm running on my channel these days, that isn't really a wide-body fit airport. It is predominantly narrow-body aircraft and generally quite regional, you know, sort of short to medium haul routes generally only. So yeah, it's quite a surprise, but yeah, 2 years since I have last done a wide-body review on this YouTube channel, and we're going to be doing a really cool one today. This is a review of the Brussels Airlines Airbus A330-300 by Phoenix models. So I'm super excited. So without any further ado, let's get right on into it. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a look over the box. Now because it's a Phoenix box, we have got sort of quite a unique box for the aircraft, not like Gemini jets where they do everything the same for every model. So that's really nice. We'll just take a little bit of a quick look over it. So obviously at the front we've got this computer generated image of the model. That is just the Brussels Airlines livery there on the beautiful A330, and we do actually have a white nose on this aircraft. I'll get into that a little bit later and why I chose to go with that one. But we've also got Airbus A330 as you can see, and the Brussels Airlines logo down there. On the back we have got a pretty plain back really. I mean, it says limited edition there and we've got the Brussels Airlines there again. Yeah, not really a huge amount of detail on this box, but it is nice with the colour scheme of Brussels Airlines sort of being depicted quite nicely all the way around the box. And we've got the Heart of Aviation and of course the Phoenix logo there as normal. So there you go, that's a quick look around the box. Without any further ado, let's unbox the model. So opening it at the sides like so, and we've got the plastic tray here as normal. Just going to try and slide the slip with a really tight packaging off. There we go. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a sort of sheet of plastic on the top just to protect the wings from the abrasion of the two surfaces there. And here we are with the model. Now this isn't a new one for me. I've actually owned this model for around 1.5 years now. I bought this from the aircraft model store, and we'll get on to how much I bought it for a little bit later in the review. But I was super happy with this aircraft when it arrived, and I really still am now. But it's kind of disappointing because I haven't really had the opportunity to use it. I don't think that you guys have actually seen this model before in terms of, you know, on my YouTube channel at all. I'm not really running ANL International, my international airport at the moment. That was based down in London. If you're a long-term viewer of the channel, then you may very well remember that airport. I don't actually have a physical board to be operating that at the moment, and so I don't really have the ability to do ANL International. But really, I purchased this model for use on there, you know, for sort of high density routes between Brussels and London, and so you never know, at some point this model may get some more use. But for now I'm going to rearrange the camera so that we can take a proper look at this beautiful model from Phoenix. Okay then, so let's take a tour of this model's best features. So starting up at the front then, we have got the cockpit section. Now this is something that I would actually like to talk about in quite a little bit of detail. Obviously I've already pointed out that I went for the white nose variant, but I'm genuinely curious about your guys' input on this. Do you think that with these close-up pictures that the sort of front graphics for the cockpit windows, do you think that they look right? I can't really quite decide whether they do or not. My gut feeling is that maybe the front two windshields are in perhaps the wrong position somewhat, or maybe they're a little bit too big, or maybe the scaling just isn't quite right. But I don't know about you, I do feel as though there's something that isn't quite as realistic. It doesn't quite capture the angular style of the Airbus cockpit front. So yeah, maybe that is a little bit strange. It's just something to do with the way that that sort of front graphic is sitting on the bridge nose of the aircraft, that perhaps that maybe doesn't look dreadfully realistic, but from any real distance it isn't really noticeable. Perhaps it's just because I've been staring at it for a couple of minutes now, but maybe it doesn't look quite as realistic as it possibly could have done. Just behind that though, we have got the Star Alliance logo. That star picked out really nicely there, and that's a really crisp visible piece, as you can see by these close-up photos. Just behind that we have also got the R1 service door. that has got all of the different little bits of details there. I can see that there's a tiny little window, and we've also got the small sort of, you know, the mechanical segments and all of the writing to do with sort of opening the door from the outside. So that's really good and really good feature to be included. Just below that, down at the bottom belly of the aircraft, we have got the front cargo door. That's really good, and I can also see all sorts of static ports and that sort of thing looking there, as you can see. I'll put close-up photos up because the sort of video feed isn't quite as good. But yeah, we've got all sorts of static ports. I can see some pitot tubes down there and some static ports, and of course the front cargo service door there. And then we've got the Brussels Airlines logo. That looks really good. In terms of the colour fidelity for this model, I have taken a look at some of the real-life liveries from Brussels Airlines, and this does appear as though it is spot on in terms of the colours. They do look true to life, and they've been translated really well onto the model. Moving a little bit... Further back then, we come to the wings and the engines. Now this is possibly the best bit of the entire model. I really do feel as though this has been done very well. As you can see, take a look at some of these close-up photos. We've got some really good detail in terms of two different colours on the top of the wings, and the no step zones marked out really clearly there. The engines are also another really good piece. So we've got all sorts of detail, including the reverse thrust doors, two different colours on the engine mountings there, as you can see, and the nice silver fronting there to the Rolls-Royce engines. And we've also got some internal fan detail, as you can see. The only slight downside that I would say about the wing and engine assembly is perhaps it's a little bit tacky where the wings actually mount to the fuselage. Maybe there is a little bit of an unsightly gap there on the right hand side of the model, at least. As you can see, there is a little bit of sort of a dark gap there, and perhaps a little bit more care could have been taken in terms of, you know, positioning that correctly in the hole. There is a little bit of a gap there, and that can be quite noticeable. The only other small gripe I have with the wings on this aircraft, I'm just going to tilt it up. You might be able to see that the right hand wing has a little bit of flex on it. Now that is actually sort of the flex, which is the opposite way than it normally would be. Quite a lot of the time you have it bending upwards. This one is actually bending downwards a little bit, so it sort of plateaus off and goes a little bit flat. Now wing flex isn't generally something that I tend to pick up on too much, because generally it's not really something that I tend to notice when I'm looking at a model sort of on the airport. But looking up at it closely, that right hand wing does look as though it's got a little bit of sort of an unsightly flex there, so that's something to watch out for. These are obviously to do with the nature and the scale of these aircraft. These are quite thin pieces, and so I suppose it isn't at all unsurprising that, you know, potentially these are going to end up getting flexed at some point. So there you go, that's just something to watch out for there. Moving a little bit further backwards then, behind that whole section we have got the rear cargo door. That's looking really good, and in terms of the livery, I suppose this back section is the most complicated bit. We've obviously got the light blue running along the bottom section of the fuselage all the way along, and at the rear section here we then have that sort of really deep rich navy blue coming up from the bottom and onto the tail section. Now this is a really interesting thing that I've only just noticed about the Brussels Airlines livery. It would appear as though the actual top of the rear elevators themselves have been picked out in the same blue colour. Now that is really unusual. I don't know whether you guys can think of any other examples of airlines doing this. I can think of one possibly Chinese airline, I can't remember the name of it, but they paint their wings red, I think. But yeah, this is a really interesting feature, the actual rear elevators being painted on the top and the bottom in that sort of deep blue livery. I presume that because this is on the model that is prototypical. I will put up a reference photo on the screen just to make sure that that's correct, and if I am wrong then obviously I'll put the little text at the top saying that I am wrong. But that's a really interesting feature there. So in terms of that rear section, we have got obviously the elevators, we've got the tiny little APU exhaust port down at the end there. And on the tail, we've got the big B, which is the sort of foundation of the Brussels Airlines logo. And then we've got the registration number as well, which is Oscar Oscar Sierra Foxtrot X-Ray. That whole section of the model looks really good. Everything is aligned straight, and that looks really impressive. Just trying to think of anything else that I haven't yet mentioned. Let's talk a little bit about the landing gear. Now this is another area of this model that perhaps slightly looks maybe a little bit unrealistic. Take a look at some of these close-up photos, because I'm not entirely sure whether the level of shine and sort of metallic effect that the landing gear has been given is entirely realistic. For me, I think it looks a little bit too plasticky, and a little bit too shiny. The real aircraft doesn't really look this shiny in terms of the landing gear. The wheels are okay, but the actual sort of body struts of the landing gear pieces, for me, it doesn't really do it. I mean, it's not too bad because generally you only really see the tyres when it's standing in an upright position, but in terms of realism, I do feel as though, you know, Phoenix have perhaps overdone it slightly in terms of the sheen that they've given the sort of those separately fitted landing gear pieces. The front one is okay. I suppose it's just more obvious in the sort of wing sets of landing gear when you do have that sort of increased shine, because there is quite a lot of hardware and sort of metalwork around there where they have done those pieces, and perhaps that is a little bit too shiny. Now, as we're talking about separately fitted pieces, let's have a little bit of a conversation about separately fitted antenna. So we've got one on the bottom there, as you can see, modelled. And then on the top, we have got a couple of them. So we've actually got 3 antennae, and a really interesting feature of this particular model, we actually have a Wi-Fi box picked out sort of separately as part of the mould. Now, quite a lot of the time, 1:400 scale manufacturers do tend to sort of dodge the bullet on Wi-Fi boxes by just sort of including them as a transfer on the top. But actually, Phoenix, in this particular instance, have taken the care and actually added the Wi-Fi box up there, sort of between the Brussels and the Airlines text. Up there at the top, they have actually added that as a physical part of the moulding, and that's just, again, some really nice attention to detail for that added bit of realism. Okay then, so this is where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about how much I paid for this Brussels Airlines A330. Now, in total, from the aircraft model store last year, I paid £36. Now, just bear in mind that that is with shipping, so that brings it down to about £31 for the model itself. And I don't know about you, but I feel as though that is a really, really good deal, especially in today's sort of climate in terms of models and prices. Honestly, you'd be really lucky to get a new A320 or a 737 for £32. Generally, you'd be looking at 36, 37. So in order to get an A330, a wide-body aircraft with such a good quality livery, and actually that generally looks really good and really true to life, is really, really impressive. So honestly, I'm really, really happy with the value for money in terms of this model. Now, in terms of availability, I haven't been able to find this aircraft for sale anywhere here in the UK. As I say, I did purchase it from the aircraft model store back last year, but it is no longer there, and I'm afraid it has sold out. So if you guys do have the option to pick this up and you do feel as though this is a model that's going to be useful in your collection, then I would absolutely recommend that you pick it up if you manage to get it for a reasonable price. Generally, I don't think I'd pay any more than £40 for it, because there are some problems there. The wing flex is one problem, the sort of slightly shiny gear is another issue that I did pick out, and that sort of nose cockpit section there, it is a little bit strange in terms of the way that transfer is fitting on the nose of the aircraft. But overall, as I said, I'm really, really satisfied. So there you go, that is my review of this Brussels Airlines A330-300. I'm really, really happy with it, as I'm sure you can tell, and I really do hope that this is a model and sort of the kind of aircraft that I'm going to be able to use a little bit more at Will Scarlett International going forwards. And you never know, towards the end of the year I may start to introduce A&L International back, but it is going to involve me having to find a baseboard and sort of essentially rebuilding the model airports, because actually the original A&L Models International is underneath WSI, so it's on the reverse side of this board. But there you go, I'm waffling now, so that is going to be it for today's aircraft review. I really do hope that you enjoyed it and maybe you found it useful. If you did, then please do let me know down in the comments section below. But for now, I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Alright, I'll see you later, guys. Bye.